Night of Horror International Film Festival coming up this weekend in Eau Claire. One of the films you can see on a Sunday afternoon is called Séance, and joining me now is the film's director, writer, producer. She stars in it. Vivian Kerr, you're kind of doing it all for this film. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me about it here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me.
So, for starters, just give me a little bit of your background in the film industry. Again, you are doing a lot of different things on Seance, but how did you get started in the world of film, whether it be acting or directing? Just what is your background in film, Vivian?
So first of all, I started as an actor. So I came down to LA originally to study acting and theater at USC, and thought I would be like some famous like Shakespearean actress on Broadway or something. And then I graduated and realized, to actually make a living, I needed to get some work on camera. So throughout my 20s, I was doing small guest spots on TV shows, like Grey's Anatomy, Criminal Minds, kind of all those shows that everybody was doing. And then really started falling in love with camera work and being on all those sets, watching the directors, watching how the crew worked with each other and collaborated. I started getting really excited about writing and directing and yeah, in 2021, I shot my first feature, Scrap, which I also wrote, directed, and acted in. And now I'm obsessed with directing and have made a second feature.
So when it comes to the directing side of things, going from acting into directing, was that a seamless transition for you? Were there some difficulties when it came to stepping behind the camera? What were some of those transition periods like for you when it came to deciding that directing is another one of your passions that you wanted to pursue?
I think that sort of there's pros and cons because I think, however you come to directing, whatever your background is like going to sort of be what you lean on. So I think to the extent that it was easy in that I had been on a lot of sets and I had worked with a lot of directors.
Mm,
So I knew what I wanted as an actor from a director. So I aimed to kind of provide um, that atmosphere and give those kind of notes. Like as a actor, it would always sort of annoy me if I felt like the director wasn't paying attention to the acting. Like if
mm,
it felt like that I could tell that they were watching and they were like just like I don't know, looking at the lighting or looking at like the
mm,
focus pull or whatever, and they would just like if I ever got the sense that what I was doing was incidental or unimportant, like it
mm,
would kind of really annoy me. So I try to, even though obviously as the director you are looking at everything, like you
mm,
are looking at the lighting and the focus pulling and you're obsessed with everything. Um but you have to make the actors at least feel like they're with the work that they're doing is always of primary import. So I think yeah, that was like I think the pro is that like I had that experience on set. Um, I think the challenge, the con was just giving myself permission to step into that role. I didn't have a master's degree in directing, and although I had directed plays and taken directing classes in undergrad, I had never, before I'd made Scrap, I'd never made a full feature. So I
mm,
think just giving myself that permission and allowing myself to possibly screw it up, and
mm.
you finally get to that point where you're like, well, I wrote it. So if anyone's going to screw it up, it's going to be me. So, yeah, I think a lot of just sort of holding myself back for a long
Mm.
time, not believing in myself enough.
Mm. So how did that experience of making Scrap then help you out when you were making Seance? Getting that first film under your belt, how big was that for you before you can then went into feature number two?
It was huge. I mean, I think by the day we wrapped Scrap, in the back of my head, I mean, even though we had, so much more work to do on like post-production and festival strategy and distribution, like there was still a very, very long road ahead of me for that film. But the day we wrapped Scrap, I immediately knew like I want to shoot another feature right away because
Mm,
I felt like I had learned so much in the 4 weeks that we had shot Scrap. I was so eager to make another film so that I could sort of just like double down on what I learned. Because I felt like, sort of everything had opened up for me and I just felt like, yeah, like I can take so many more risks now because once you have one under your belt, you yeah, I just felt like I could kind of really go for something very different.
mm,
And I wanted to push myself. So Seance is so different from Scrap in every way. Scrap is set in modern day Los Angeles,
mm,
um, and is like a dramedy about a brother and sister. And then Seance obviously is like a very painterly kind of period piece, very much like in the vein of those 1960s horror films like The Haunting,
Mhm.
The Innocents with Deborah Carr. So you know, it, making a departure like that was very exciting for me. And I wanted to do something that would push me in terms of my visual storytelling and my ability to work with cinematographers.
Mhm.
So, Seance, luckily, I already had that script written. I had written that script during the pandemic in 2020. So, it felt like the perfect next film to do after Scrap.
So talk a little bit more about Seance with me then. Can you describe the film for people who are hearing it for the first time, about it for the first time, and just kind of what was the inspiration behind the story of Seance?
Yeah, so it's a four-character chamber piece, very, very loosely inspired by an August Strindberg play called Creditors, which I read during the pandemic. And the play only has three characters, and it's about a woman and her second husband vacationing at a seaside hotel, and her first husband sort of shows up. And there's all this kind of twisty, subtext like there always is with those sort of like Nordic playwrights, and you don't really know what's happening. And
Mhm.
like the second husband's kind of messing with the first husband, and you don't really know if she wants to go back to the first husband. Like, all of this is sort of unspoken.
Mhm.
And I thought like that kind of themes of sort of like gender dynamics and adultery and, regrets, right? Like getting to the middle of your life and wondering if what are the would have, could have, should haves. And I thought, well, all of that could be really fun for inside, one of those like 1960s trapped in a house
Mhm.
sort of thrillers. And so then it was just kind of, I also added to that a fourth character, which is the character that I play, Lillian, um, and added to that the storyline of her losing her child by drowning. And so, we also have this element of grief,
Mhm.
and perhaps there is a little girl ghost in the house.
Let's have to watch the film and find
Yeah,
out.
yeah, maybe.
So when you were in the middle of, production on this film, because as you mentioned, you're the writer, the producer, director, the actor, wearing so many different hats when you're putting this film together. Just what were some of those biggest challenges of putting Seance together, of embarking on kind of a larger period piece that was very, atmospheric, it looks like as well, and just what were some of those challenges for you?
It required so much more pre-production work than Scrap did. Scrap was very much kind of like a run and gun kind of thing. Um, like so many of our locations on Scrap, like we didn't bring any production design. Like we just showed up and shot what was there, or like rearranged things, what was there. It was that kind of a film.
Mhm.
But it worked for, what that film was about. And but with Seance, like everything had to be, there was just so much work that our production designer had to do, and so much work that I had to do as well, and sort of deciding all these things. Um, almost all the rooms in the a film, like we either painted or we put up wallpaper, or we brought in so much furniture, like so many props. There was just so much that had to be done design wise. And then I think also, working with my cinematographer. So fun story, although not so fun at the time, was my original cinematographer for Seance actually left the project 2 weeks before we were gonna start shooting.
Oh,
And
yikes.
yeah, and so that was it was a nightmare at the time, but silver lining, I ended up then bringing on another DP named Joanna Quello, who is so incredible. She's actually shooting or finishing up shooting the first season of The Pit right now for Max, and she's just an incredible DP. And so working with her, kind of hitting sort of hard reset and taking a step back and like, working with her and having her see the script through fresh eyes, um, really changed like me as a director, and how I want to work with DPs and how collaborative I want to be with them. So it was her suggestion to shoot on vintage lenses. So we shot on Super Baltars, which um are these beautiful lenses that were also used on The Godfather, and they just have this like really beautiful look to them where like the edges are soft and they kind of give these really beautiful like purple and blue flares. And
Mhm.
she was so committed to um kind of collaborating with me on how we could create the atmospherics of the house.
Mhm.
And so that was incredibly fun for a project like this. But yeah, I mean, the main thing, it was just so much more work. It was like three times the work. So, but
And
great.
yeah, and then did it help as well having a smaller cast on a film like this too when you're doing all that pre-production work? Just what was that like? Just only having you and three other actors involved in this process.
Yeah, I think it was easier. I think
Mm,
if this had been, I don't know, sort of like a Downton Abbey, Gosford Park-esque film where there's
mm,
like a dozen characters and you have to track all of their through lines, um, it would have made it more, we would have needed more shoot days just to get that coverage, because
mm,
even you think it's going to be easy. You're like, oh, it's only four characters, but like, for that scene where we're sitting around the dining room table,
mm,
um, requires a lot of coverage. Like there's a lot of, we all have our mediums, we all have our close-ups, like there's
mm,
two different wide shots. Like it's just a lot. And anytime you're shooting stuff around a table, it always takes twice as long as you think it's going to take. So, um, yeah, so there were just things that took a long time and things that I wanted, that took a
mm,
long time. Like we have a couple shots with the jib, and that takes a long time to set up.
mm,
And we had scenes underwater. And so we had to have an underwater camera operator, who was brilliant. So it was just a lot. Like there were a lot of things in the script that I, included that were not like easy things to shoot. So
mm,
luckily, I think, yes, we got away with it because we only had four characters.
mm.
If we had had more characters, we would have had probably needed to add like 3 or 4 days to the schedule.
Mm. So I'm curious about this too, because I've talked to a couple directors in lead up to the festivals happening in Eau Claire who also star in their films. For you, how do you find directing yourself? Is that a challenging process? Is that a confusing process at all to, try to separate the directing side of things from the acting side of things? Just what's that like for you to not only be behind the camera, but also in front of the camera?
Well, she's very difficult. She doesn't take notes well. You know what? I love it. When I was younger, when I was a kid, I really admired Kenneth Branagh, and all those films, Dead Again, Much Ado About Nothing, Henry V. I grew up watching them, and he was one of my favorite actors. And when I discovered that he also directed those movies, I was like, what? Like, I think I remember being a kid and seeing his like 3 hour Hamlet, um, and was like, wait, I don't understand. Like, how? What? He's directed this movie, and he's also Hamlet? Like, what?
Yeah,
I don't
how can you
understand.
be he in two places at once? Like,
Yeah, and like but film is so chopped up. You're shooting it out of order, like it's so bifurcated anyway that it's just so like as an actor, a lot of your work is tracking that character arc, the through line of your character so that you can drop in to any scene when you are shooting it out of order and kind of create that emotional through line. So you're so used to doing that as an actor anyway. And then directing, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're okay, so but instead of just focusing on one character's track, you're kind of focusing on the entire storyline, and just making sure like whatever day you're shooting, whatever scene it is, making sure that you're getting exactly what you need to like tie it, make sure that that puzzle piece will nicely slot into the whole picture. And uh yeah, that's so it's a similar challenge. And I think obviously I'm biased, but I think a lot of actors make the best directors, or at least ones that have had acting background.
Because you know what other actors kind of need as well as you're directing the other actors on set. I'm sure that's a big benefit as well.
Yeah, and just like I said, you're just used to like you understand what it is to care about the storytelling and the relationship dynamics. Like
Mm,
sometimes I go to film festivals and I see films where I I can tell I either sort of question the director's taste in acting, or I can tell that the acting is not that important to them, because you'll see films that are like, I don't know, they're shot and like, they look incredible, like the cinematography is amazing, but then the acting is like incredibly wooden or amateurish, and you're like, huh? Like it almost like doesn't make any sense, because you're like, why would they spend so much time, making sure the lighting was beautiful and the costumes are beautiful, and but if we don't even buy the relationships, like
mm,
two characters come out and say like, oh, the husband, I mean, not that that would be the dialogue, but two actors come out and they're representing themselves as husband and wife. And
mm,
from 15 seconds in, you're like, no, you aren't. You don't buy it. You just don't buy it, and you never buy it. And
mm,
so I think, you know, I guess it just everyone sort of, focuses on what's important to them. But for me, the story doesn't work if you don't believe the acting. It doesn't
mm,
matter how good all the other elements of the film are in. Like no
mm,
one's gonna like run home and be like, oh my God, that 6 minute tracking shot was so incredible. They only will talk about the 6 minute tracking shot that was so incredible if the storytelling was good and the acting was good. So
mm.
that's kind of a really important box that has to be checked. So, um, but also, people have different tastes. I'm sure some people are going to watch Seance and be like, oh, that acting is terrible. So,
That's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah.
So in totality, when you're kind of looking back now on Seance, and obviously it's a bigger project than you've ever done in your career before, and you're involved in so many aspects of this whole film, just how proud are you of the finished product? Is it kind of what you wanted it to be? Just what was that like when you finally saw it kind of in totality?
Yeah, I am really proud of it. I think no director ever gets 100% of what they want, right? So I think like but like if you get like 80, 90%, it's like such a win. And I do feel like I got 80, 90%. I feel like in the time we had, the budget we had, it was an incredibly ambitious film to make for a smaller indie budget.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that it was period alone. And so I think we achieved so much of what was in my head. So I'm really, really grateful. And also, it's not even like my win. It's the win for Joanna Coelho, my DP that I mentioned. It's her success. It's Bree Jones, our production designer, it's her success. Nina Fuller, our costume designer, it's her success. Because those are the people, those are the skilled craftspeople that I am the direct beneficiary of. So people might say, like, good directing, Vivian, but I'm like, yeah, I just hired these people who
Mm-hmm.
really did a great job and made my film look good.
Hmm. So then tell me about the process now of getting Seance out into the world, because obviously with smaller independent productions, film festivals play a huge role in getting that out to the public. So just tell me about the festivals you've been able to take Seance to already.
So this is going to be our third film festival. So we world premiered at Newport Beach Film Festival, and then we just had our second festival at Beaufort International Film Festival in South Carolina, which was very exciting because we won Best Feature, and then Scotty Thompson, who plays Emma, won Best Actress, which I was very proud of her for. I think her performance is incredible. Um, so yeah, and so this is a night of horror. This is our third festival, and this is our first genre festival. So it's interesting because we coming up, I think we're going to have a nice mix of festivals that are genre and specific and non-genre specific. We're going to play have our international premiere at Fantaspoa in Brazil, which is great, which is a huge genre festival. And then we also have gotten into some great regional festivals like Phoenix Film Festival,
Hmm.
Julian Dubuque in Iowa. So I think it's going to have a nice festival run, being able to kind of live a little bit in both worlds.
Hmm. And then what do you hope audiences take away from the experience of watching Seance? Because you're going to, again, slowly but surely putting it out to all these different festivals all around the country. But the folks here in Eau Claire who are going to be seeing it this weekend, just what do you hope they kind of take away from that experience of watching your film?
Yeah, the film is so much about, I think, regret and characters reflecting back on their lives and sort of like the road not taken. And, to the extent that I don't know it helps anyone sort of like process any lingering um, questions they might have for themselves, or, I feel like I can't get too specific without giving away the plot, but, but maybe it helps the audience a little bit reflect on their own lives about things that are unresolved in their mind, relationships that are not quite fully resolved, that maybe they need to sort of um, close the door on to move forward.
Hmm. And then for you going forward in your career, you mentioned as soon as you were done with Scrap, you wanted to immediately do that second feature. Are you now chomping at the bit to do that third feature, or is there already something in mind that you wanted to do going forward?
Yeah, I am very much chomping at the bit to do a third feature. There's a couple shorts that I'd like to shoot this year as well, if I can, just because I think Uh, there's like some things I would like to try that I haven't done that I think I want to try sort of in the world of shorts first.
Mhm.
One is I've never shot on film, so there's a short that I would love to shoot on 16 millimeter, if I can get the budget for that, because obviously that's more expensive. So if I can do that this year, that would be great. And then yeah, I'm writing a few different scripts right now, and hopefully one of them will be my next feature.
Is horror something you want to stay uh, be a part of as well too going forward, or is this just kind of a one-time dip into horror right now?
I mean, I think I would. I mean, there's a script I have that is well, funny enough, and it's another kind of period piece. But it's the similar kind of thing where it's more of like psychological horror.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'll get to make that next. That might be something that I might sell, or I might not make for a little while, because I think I would need a bigger budget than I had on Seance. But what I'm writing now is more like I guess thriller-ish,
Mhm.
drama thriller. Yeah.
And then just I really the final question I have for you then is just when you look back on Seance, just how has this whole experience helped you as you just kind of move forward as an actor, as a filmmaker, as a writer? Just how has this film sort of continued to benefit your career?
Well, I guess TBD, because it's only our third festival. But I think, I think just, I think it's made me bulletproof. Like, I think because it was such a hard shoot, and there were so many moments where it felt like things weren't going to work or something was going to fall apart, and then it kind of came together at the last second. Um, and like so many moments too where even for myself I was so like, gosh, it feels impossible to keep going, like how are we going to keep going, we're running out of money, we're running out of time. It was absolutely the most ambitious project I've ever done. And so, but when you come through something like that, you come out on the other side and like somehow it worked, it does kind of make you bulletproof. Like now I'm like, I kind of don't care what anyone says. I sort of like don't, I sort of completely believe in myself. And once I've done something so hard like that, I'm like, well, nothing can ever be harder than that. So, it gives you a really great perspective of just how much resilience you have.
If folks want to see Seance, it's playing at the Downtown Cinema in Eau Claire this Sunday at 4 p.m. as part of a Night of Horror International Film Festival. Vivian, thank you so much for your time here today. Good luck on everything going forward with Seance. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much.